Rain fell hard on the roof of the small outpost cabin. The night was cold, quiet, and dark. Only the sound of wind and thunder filled the lonely place. Inside, the human named Ray was fixing an old heating unit. He lived alone, far from the city. On a quiet planet called Durnus 7, suddenly, a knock came at the door. Soft but clear, Ray paused, looking up with a frown. No one ever came out here, not at this hour. He grabbed his jacket and slowly opened the door. There, standing in the pouring, Rain was a small alien girl. She looked no older than 15 in human years. Her skin was pale blue with soft markings on her face. She wore a torn jacket too big for her and held a broken cum device. Her eyes were wide, but not scared, just tired. She looked up and said, "I'm practically an adult human." Ray blinked, confused. He had never seen her before. "Where did you come from?" He asked. She didn't answer, only stepped forward. "Please, can I stay for the night?" She added in a small voice. Ray moved aside, letting her in. She walked in carefully, like she didn't want to make a mess. She sat down near the small heater and held her hands out to the warmth. Her fingers were shaking, her clothes soaked. Ray handed her a blanket and some water. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him, then away. "Nova," she whispered. Ray nodded, sitting across from her. "Well, Nova, you're safe here for now." They didn't talk much that night. Nova fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in the blanket. Ray watched her, puzzled by how someone so young ended up here. In the morning, she was already awake, trying to fix her broken cum device. Her hands moved fast, skilled, but her tools were limited. Ray offered her breakfast, which she quietly accepted. She didn't eat fast, but carefully, like every bite mattered. "You're really not a child?" he asked, half joking. Nova looked at him and said, "I've lived alone since I was 10. Her voice was calm, but there was pain behind her words. Days passed, and she stayed. Ray didn't mind. She was quiet, helpful, and clever. She helped fix machines, clean filters, and even repaired a broken drone. She learned fast, and her hands were steady. But she never spoke of her past. At night, Ray would hear her talking in her sleep. Sometimes she whispered strange words, names, numbers. Sometimes she cried without sound. He never asked her about it. Not yet. She always acted like everything was fine during the day. One afternoon, they sat outside watching the sunset. The sky turned orange and red as the wind passed gently. Nova looked up and said, "I like this place." Ray smiled. "It's quiet, not many people around." She nodded. "That's why I feel safe here." That night, Nova showed him a strange metal chip. "It belonged to my mother," she said softly. "She said one day I'd need it, but I don't know what it does." Ray took it, turning it over in his fingers. It looked like nothing he had seen before. He promised to help her figure it out. For the first time, Nova smiled, not a big smile, but a real one. It made her eyes look brighter, less tired. The cabin no longer felt so lonely. They had become a strange little team, but one morning Ray woke up and found the couch empty. The blanket was folded neatly, the water cup cleaned. Nova was gone. No sign, no note, no message, just the broken cum device, left on the table with the strange metal chip beside it. Ray searched around, called her name, checked the radar, nothing. She had disappeared as suddenly as she came. He stood in the doorway, rain falling again, and he whispered, "Where did you go, Nova?" He didn't know then, but the story was far from over. She had returned once, and one day, she would return again, but not as a shy teen. She would come back changed, and so would everything else. Ray didn't talk about Nova anymore, not to anyone, not even to himself. He had buried her memory deep inside, like a box locked tight and hidden in the dark. Years had passed since that strange alien girl appeared at his door and vanished without a trace. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, and the rain hit the roof in the same rhythm, he remembered her voice. "I'm practically an adult human," she had said, and then she was gone. The outpost had changed since then. More people had arrived, new buildings were raised, and a small trading station was added. Ray still lived in the same cabin, a little older now, more quiet, more tired. He kept busy fixing machines, clearing comms, and pretending he didn't feel lonely. Until the night something fell from the sky. It wasn't a shooting star, it was a burning ship spinning. Screaming through the clouds like a wounded bird, Ray saw it from his window, crashing beyond the ridge where the forest began. He grabbed his gear and ran without thinking. His boots slammed into the wet dirt as fire lit the dark sky ahead of him. The ship was a small personal craft, badly damaged, half buried in the mud. Steam rose from the cracks, flames hissed in the rain. Ray reached the side hatch and pried it open with a crowbar. Inside was thick smoke, broken panels, and silence. He coughed and crawled in, calling out, "Is anyone alive in here?" A figure moved in the back, slowly, like a shadow peeling itself from the dark. It stepped into the light, limping slightly. Ray's heart froze. She was taller now, her clothes strange and armored, her face sharper, her eyes glowing faintly, but he knew those eyes. "Nova?" he whispered, almost not believing it. The girl tilted her head, then gave the smallest smile. "You remember," she said softly, her voice older but still familiar. Ray didn't know whether to hug her or yell at her. Instead, he held out his hand, and she took it. He helped her out of the wreck, and they walked slowly back to the outpost. She said little, only that she needed rest. Her steps were slow, her breathing uneven. But she didn't complain. He opened the old cabin door, and she paused at the entrance. It was almost like she had never left. Nova sat in the same corner, looking around with quiet eyes. Ray handed her water, a blanket, and a soft look of confusion. "You've changed," he said, sitting across from her. "You haven't," she replied, sipping the water without looking up. She didn't explain where she had been. Ray didn't push her, not yet, but at night, he stayed awake listening to her sleep. This time, no whispers came from her mouth. Only silence, like her dreams were locked behind walls. And Ray didn't like that silence. The next day, she helped him fix an old scanner. Her hands were faster, more confident, but her touch was different. Ray watched her from the side, noticing the strange metal bracelet on her wrist. It blinked with a soft blue light, almost like it was alive. He asked what it was, and she just said, "A reminder." He wanted to ask more. Where had she gone? Why had she left without a word? How had she grown into this quiet, mysterious version of the girl he once knew? But something in her eyes said, not now. That night, while they ate a simple meal of heated rations, she finally asked a question. "Did you ever try to find me?" Ray blinked, surprised. "I did, for weeks," he said. But there were no tracks, no signal, no clues, just nothing. She looked down at her food, nodded once, then said, "Good." Her answer confused him. Why would she be glad he didn't find her? Before he could ask, the cabin lights flickered for a second. Nova looked up quickly, eyes sharp, as if something had triggered inside her. Ray noticed the bracelet on her wrist blinked again, this time faster. He narrowed his eyes. "Nova, is someone following you?" She didn't speak. Instead, she stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the dark trees. Then she said something Ray would never forget. "If they find me here, they'll burn this whole place down." Ray kept watching her from across the room. She stood still by the window, eyes locked on the dark trees outside. The rain had stopped, but the wind still moved the branches like slow hands reaching out. Nova didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe loud. Something in her posture told Ray the danger was real. He had seen fear before, real fear, but this wasn't it. Nova wasn't scared. She was preparing, like she had done this before. She turned away from the window and slowly walked to the small tool bench. Ray followed her with his eyes but didn't speak. She picked up a screwdriver, opened her wrist device, and started adjusting wires with steady hands. "What are you doing?" he asked finally. "Making sure they don't track me," she replied without looking up. Ray stepped closer, frowning. "You said they'll burn this place down." He said quietly, "Who are they?" Nova didn't answer right away. She snapped the device shut and sat down on the floor, legs crossed, eyes tired. "You ever hear of the Arkan Syndicate?" she asked. Ray shook his head. "They collect things," she said, voice slow and hollow. "Tech, power, secrets people." Ray didn't like where this was going. "They collected me too," Nova whispered. Ray felt his chest tighten. He wanted to ask more, but she spoke before he could. "I escaped, but not before they made me into something else." She lifted her left sleeve and revealed a faint glowing pattern beneath her skin. It wasn't a tattoo. It pulsed with light. Thin lines running like circuits just under her flesh. Ray stared, stunned. "What did they do to you?" Nova looked away. "They tried to make me a translator for ancient tech," she said. "They injected me with micronodes, gave me a neural map of a dead alien race. I wasn't the only one. But I was the only one who survived." Ray's stomach turned as he listened. He wanted to believe she was lying, but her eyes were too honest. "And now they want you back," Ray said. More like a statement than a question. Nova nodded. "They don't like to lose their tools," she said. Her voice was flat, almost robotic, but her hands were shaking slightly. That night, Ray couldn't sleep. He lay awake on the couch, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling. Nova sat outside, on the cabin steps. Not afraid, just alert. She held a small round object in her hand, rolling it between her fingers. Ray didn't know what it was, but it wasn't anything human. At dawn, a strange sound filled the forest. It wasn't natural, it was mechanical. Soft but sharp, like a signal pulse. Nova stood and walked into the cabin, face tight. "There." "Close," she said. "That was a ping scan." Ray grabbed his gear without asking why. "What do we do?" he asked. Nova looked around the cabin slowly, as if saying goodbye. "You stay here," she said. "I'll lead them away." Ray stepped in front of her, blocking the door. "Like hell you will," he said. Nova looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand what they'll do if they find me," she said. Ray didn't move. "I don't care," he replied. "I'm not letting you disappear again." For a moment, silence held the room still. Then Nova did something Ray didn't expect. She smiled, small and tired. "Still stubborn," she said, almost like a memory. She walked past him and sat at the table, pulling the strange chip from her pocket. "I guess we better get ready then," she said softly. Ray sat beside her. He didn't know what kind of danger was coming. He didn't know how far it would go, but he knew one thing clearly now. Nova wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was the storm they had to survive. And this time, he would stand beside her, no matter what. The sky changed color that morning. It went from soft blue to a strange silver, like something heavy was hanging. Above the clouds, birds stopped singing, wind stopped moving, and everything stood still like it was holding its breath. Ray stood outside with Nova, both staring at the sky in silence. Then they saw it. A dark ship slid through the clouds like a knife through water. No lights, no sound, no flag. It moved slowly, like it wasn't in a hurry. Nova's eyes narrowed. "That's them," she said quietly. Ray felt cold sweat on his back. The ship was too close to the outpost. Too low. "They're scanning," Nova whispered. "Looking for any tech signature that matches me." Ray looked around at the tools, machines, and devices they had used the night before. "Then we're not hiding well," he said. Nova nodded. Her fingers tapping the metal chip on the table, she took a deep breath, as if preparing for something painful. "I have one option," she said. "It's dangerous, but it might hide my signature." She didn't explain what it was, only asked him to trust her. He did, without question. She placed the chip into her wrist device and muttered something in a strange language. The lights in the cabin flickered. The floor vibrated for a second. Then everything powered down. Total silence. The heating stopped. The lights died. Even Ray's watch went black. It was like the outpost had died all at once. Ray stood in the cold dark, staring at her. Nova's eyes glowed faintly now, her skin markings pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "That's not normal," he said, trying to sound calm. "No," she replied, "but neither am I, outside." The ship hovered closer, now only a few hundred feet above. Then, without warning, something dropped from it. 3 scout drones. Spherical black with red sensors blinking like eyes. They flew low, scanning the ground. Buzzing softly as they moved, Nova ducked near the window, eyes tracking their path. Ray reached for his old plasma tool, the closest thing he had to a weapon. "Don't fight them," Nova said quickly. "They're just scouts. They'll report back," Ray whispered. "Then what?" Nova looked at him with a steady face. "Then they'll send the real hunters." They waited in silence as the drones passed overhead. One paused near the cabin, hovering just outside the roof. Nova didn't move, didn't breathe. Her hand slowly pressed against her wrist device. Ray thought his heart might explode from how loud it felt. Then, after what felt like hours, the drone flew away. Nova sat down hard, her body shaking slightly. Ray knelt beside her, not saying anything. She wiped her face with her sleeve and whispered, "They're not gone, just regrouping." Ray knew she was right. He had seen enough battles in his younger days to know when things were far from over. Later that night, Nova began drawing on the cabin floor with chalk from Ray's tool bag. She drew symbols he didn't recognize, patterns that glowed faintly under dim light. "What is this?" he asked, watching her work. "Old tech language," she answered. "It's part of the system they forced into my brain." Ray sat near her, trying to make sense of it. She told him about a signal buried in her chip, a signal the hunters were chasing, like bloodhounds following a scent. If she could bury it inside old alien code, they might lose the trail. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had. As she worked, Ray noticed how tired she looked, not just physically but like someone who had been running too long. He wanted to ask her one thing more than anything. "Why did you come back?" he asked. Nova paused, looked at him with sad eyes. "Because when I was alone, cold, and broken, I remembered your door opening," she said. "I remembered someone letting me in without asking for anything." Ray looked away, feeling something heavy behind his ribs. She had returned not just for safety, but because she remembered kindness. Outside, the wind picked up again. And far above, a second ship arrived, darker than the first. Nova stood slowly, eyes fixed on the sky. "They're not giving up," she whispered. Ray stepped beside her, no longer afraid. "They'll have to go through both of us now," he said firmly, and Nova didn't smile. But her eyes showed something brighter than fear, something stronger than pain. She was done running, and he was done letting her run alone. The cabin shook without warning. It was not an explosion, not wind, not thunder. It was something deeper, like the planet itself had taken a breath. Ray staggered, steadying himself against the wall. Nova didn't flinch. Instead, she stood in the center of the room, her eyes closed, lips moving silently. The glowing marks on her skin grew brighter, the strange patterns pulsing faster with light. Ray had seen machines overheat before, circuits pushed beyond limit. That's what she looked like now, alive but burning from the inside. "Nova," he called out, "what are you doing?" She didn't answer. The floor under her feet glowed softly with the same alien symbols she had drawn the night before. Ray watched in awe and confusion as her body seemed to pull light from the room itself. Even the shadows bent slightly toward her. Then everything stopped. Nova opened her eyes, and Ray stepped back. They weren't just glowing. They were lit like twin stars. For a moment, she didn't look like a girl at all. She looked like a beacon. She looked like something not meant to be here. Ray's voice came out low and cautious. "What are you?" Nova blinked, and the light faded just a little. "I don't know anymore," she whispered. "But I know what they want me to be." She reached toward the table, where the alien chip still rested. As her fingers touched it, the chip hovered, floating above her palm with a low hum. Ray had never seen tech do that before. Not in all his years working with machines, not even in the war. "This isn't just a memory chip," she said. "It's a seed." Ray raised his eyebrow, confused. "A seed for what?" Nova looked at him with a calm face. For something old. Something powerful. Something buried. She closed her fingers around the floating chip and pressed it to the ground inside the glowing circle. Then she whispered in a tongue Ray couldn't understand. The earth beneath the cabin floor cracked slightly, dust rising. In a soft swirl from the circle, something began to rise a shape, metal and smooth. Like a capsule, Ray took a step back. Unable to believe what he was seeing, it looked ancient, not human, but too clean for something pulled from dirt. Nova touched it gently, and it opened like a blooming flower. Inside was a crystal, glowing with soft blue energy. This was left behind by a race older than both humans and my kind, she said. They called it a beacon of defense. Ray asked the question slowly. Can it stop them? Nova stared at the crystal, as if listening to something inside it. If I connect with it. Maybe, she said, but it will burn me from the inside. Ray stepped forward, voice firm. Then we find another way. Nova shook her head. They're getting closer, she whispered. We don't have time for another way. As if to prove her words, a sudden screech echoed through the trees outside. The kind of sound no animal ever made. Ray ran to the window, saw figures moving. Through the forest, not soldiers' machines. Tall and insect-like. Scanning, hunting, 3 of them, slowly spreading out like a trap. He turned back to Nova, panic in his voice. We have to do something now. Nova closed her eyes and pressed both hands to the crystal. A surge of light burst through the room, knocking Ray off his feet. When he sat up, Nova was floating, her body glowing like a sun. The machines outside stopped moving for a moment. Confused, then they turned toward the cabin as one. The beacon responded to Nova's energy. A wave of force exploded outward, sweeping through the forest like invisible fire. The machines were caught mid-step, their metal limbs sparking, twitching. One of them collapsed entirely, crushed by the force. The others backed away, trying to shield their sensors. Nova screamed not from fear, but from pain. Her body shook as the power ran through her like a storm. Ray crawled to her, shouting her name, but she didn't hear him. She was somewhere else now, lost inside the current of something too big for her. Then it ended. The light vanished. The symbols faded. The cabin returned to stillness. Nova fell to the floor, unmoving. Ray caught her just before her head hit the ground. Her skin was cold, her breathing shallow. He held her in his arms, whispering her name again and again. She didn't respond outside. The remaining machines retreated, limping back into the trees. The forest was quiet again. But Ray knew the war was just beginning. Nova had awakened something powerful, and now every eye in the galaxy would be looking for her. But as he looked at her pale, fragile face in the dim cabin light, he didn't care who came. She wasn't facing it alone anymore. The sky didn't look real anymore. It was too still, too quiet, like the calm before something terrible. Ray sat by Nova's side, her head resting in his lap. Her breath shallow and weak. The beacon's glow had faded, and the strange alien capsule had sunk back into the ground, as if it had never been there at all. Her skin was pale now, no longer glowing. The markings that once pulsed with light were faint like fading ink. Ray whispered her name again and again, but Nova didn't open her eyes. She looked like someone trapped between two worlds, half here, half gone. He checked her pulse, still there, soft but steady. She had survived whatever that surge was, but she had paid a heavy price. Outside the window, the forest was still scorched. From the wave she unleashed, metal pieces from the destroyed machines lay broken like bones across the ground. Ray dragged a blanket over her and turned the heater back on using backup power. The cabin lights flickered, the systems groaning like they had been through war. And in truth, they had. Ray moved to the table, placing the remaining pieces of the alien chip in a metal tray. It had cracked during the surge, glowing faintly as if it were still alive. Nova had risked everything to protect them. She had tried to end it in one strike, but Ray knew enough about war to understand one battle never ends the fight. The enemy had pulled back, not surrendered, and now they would return with bigger teeth. Hours passed. The night stretched long and bitter. Ray didn't sleep, just sat by Nova, checking her breathing every few minutes. He felt helpless. He had tools to fix broken machines. Busted engines, cracked panels, but not her. When she finally stirred, her hand twitched first. Then her eyes opened slowly, not glowing now, but still sharp, still aware. Ray leaned forward, relief washing over him. "You're back," he whispered. Nova gave a tired smile, barely a smile at all. "I didn't mean to go that far," she murmured. Ray shook his head, his voice gentle but firm. "You nearly died." Nova tried to sit up, groaned softly, and fell back again. She looked at the ceiling, her voice flat. "I thought I could burn them out completely," she said. "But they're smarter than I remembered." Ray stood and walked to the window, watching shadows shift in the tree line. "They're not gone," he said, "just regrouping." Nova nodded faintly. "There's a failsafe in my design," she whispered. Ray turned to her quickly. "What failsafe?" She licked her dry lips and looked away. "If I ever lose control, if I fall into full sync with alien tech." "I don't come back." Ray's stomach twisted. "You're saying next time could be the last?" Nova didn't answer. And her silence was louder than any words. Ray paced the room, angry at himself for not stopping her sooner, for not seeing the damage it caused. Nova sat up slowly, her legs trembling as she stood. "I'm not running again," she said. Voice stronger, Ray faced her, surprised. "You can barely stand." "But I'm still standing," she replied with a fire in her voice he hadn't heard before. She moved to the table, picked up the cracked chip pieces, and studied them. "There's still something inside this," she said. "A second pulse. I can feel it." Ray didn't understand how she knew that, but he no longer questioned her senses. Suddenly, the alert light outside the cabin began flashing red. Ray rushed to the panel, eyes scanning the display. A ship had landed small, fast, and silent. Not Arkan Syndicate colors, not government either, unknown signature. Nova stood beside him, reading the screen. "They're not from the Syndicate," she said. "They're scavengers." Ray raised an eyebrow. "That good? Or bad?" Nova didn't blink. "Depends what they're after." She moved quickly, pulling her jacket on, strapping a tool to her belt. Ray grabbed his plasma cutter, already heading for the door. "You stay here," she said suddenly. He turned, stunned. "I'm not leaving you." Nova shook her head, her tone serious but calm. "They're not coming for me," she said. "They're coming for you." Ray froze. "What?" Nova looked him dead in the eye. "You activated an ancient defense beacon with a human presence inside it. To them. That makes you valuable." Ray slowly lowered his tool. This wasn't just about her anymore. The fire she lit had started to spread, and now others wanted a piece of it. Nova reached for his arm, voice low. "Whatever happens next, don't trust anyone." Ray nodded, his jaw clenched tight. He had let her fight alone once. He wouldn't do it again, and whatever was coming through that door, he was ready. The door creaked open before either of them could stop it. The outside wind pushed in, cold and silent. But it wasn't the wind that made Ray freeze. It was the figure standing just beyond the frame, tall, cloaked, faceless, under a black helmet. No weapon was drawn, but the danger in the air was sharp as broken glass. Ray stood between Nova and the door without thinking. The stranger tilted their head, voice muffled through the helmet. "You were inside the beacon when it activated." Ray didn't answer. The figure took a step forward, slow and careful. "Your genetic pattern is now marked in the crystal," they said. "You've been tagged." Nova pushed past Ray, eyes locked on the figure. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. "I'm the warning," the figure replied. Two more shapes appeared behind the first, slimmer, quieter, moving like shadows. They didn't attack, not yet, but Ray could feel the pressure building. The first figure raised a small object, flat, silver, glowing faintly blue. It looked exactly like the chip Nova had carried. "You triggered a buried system," the figure said. Now others will come looking, not just the syndicate, not just scavengers. Collectors, warlords, ghosts from dead empires. They will come for you both. Ray's heart beat hard in his chest. Nova stepped forward, her voice calm but fierce. Then let them come. The figure tilted their head again, almost like a nod. You've made your choice, they said. The object in their hand blinked once, and then they vanished. No flash, no sound, just gone. The air felt heavier after they left. Ray shut the door slowly, locking it without knowing why. Nova leaned against the wall, silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "They were just the beginning." Ray turned to her, searching her face. "You're not scared," he said, more surprised than anything. "I was," she admitted, "for a long time, but now I remember why I came back." She walked to the table and picked up a small, rusted gear Ray had once given her. "I came back because this place meant something to me." "Because you meant something." Ray felt his throat tighten. He had saved her once, but she had saved him too. Just in a different way. She looked up, eyes calm but glowing again, only faintly. "I'm not a weapon," she said. "I'm not their tool." Ray stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. "No," he said. "You're Nova." They sat in the quiet for a while. No sirens, no crashes, no lights in the sky. Just the creaking cabin, the steady hum of old systems waking up. Ray turned on the main comm screen and stared at the map. Tiny signals blinked across the stars, moving slowly. "They're coming, aren't they?" he asked. Nova nodded. "But we won't run this time," she replied. Ray chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Guess I'll have to finally upgrade the defense grid." She smiled, more real than ever before. He handed her a wrench, and she took it like it belonged in her hand. Together they started rebuilding what was broken, not just machines, but themselves. One piece at a time, and far above, in the quiet cold of space, signals blinked and turned their paths toward a small forgotten outpost, toward a girl once used and discarded, and a human who dared to stand with her, not knowing what the future held, but choosing to face it anyway, together.